Most men destroy their power the moment they become emotionally predictable. They think constant attention creates attraction. They think explaining themselves creates understanding. But the uncomfortable truth is this: the more emotionally available you become to someone who has not earned your emotional depth, the less psychological value your presence begins to carry. Because silence is not weakness. In the wrong hands, silence becomes power. Most people think giving constant attention is proof of affection, loyalty, or emotional maturity. They believe that replying instantly, always being available, constantly checking in, and endlessly validating someone will strengthen emotional connection. But human psychology does not value what is constantly available. In fact, the mind unconsciously discounts what it no longer fears losing. Attention is one of the most powerful emotional currencies in human interaction. Yet most people give it away without discipline. And the moment your attention becomes predictable, automatic, and unconditional, its psychological value begins to collapse. This is why people often become strangely less interested after receiving too much emotional NTY. It is not always cruelty or manipulation, it is human nature reacting to familiarity and emotional predictability. The brain is stimulated by tension, uncertainty, and emotional contrast. When someone knows they can access your attention whenever they want, without effort or consequence, your presence slowly stops feeling meaningful. The mystery disappears. Emotional urgency fades. What was once valued becomes psychologically ordinary. Watch human behavior carefully in modern relationships. The person who constantly waits for messages, double texts after being ignored, rearranges their entire emotional state around another person's response time, or gives endless validation without reciprocity often loses emotional leverage without realizing it. They believe they are showing devotion, but unconsciously they are communicating something else. My attention is available regardless of how I am treated. And people instinctively respect what requires emotional effort more than what comes freely. This is why emotionally disciplined individuals appear more attractive without trying. They are not cold, they are selective. Their attention is intentional, not desperate. They do not flood people with emotional energy hoping to secure attachment. Instead, they protect their focus because they understand something most people never learn. Attention shapes perceived value. Scarcity creates psychological weight. Presence becomes powerful when absence is possible. Even outside relationships, the pattern remains the same. A leader who speaks constantly loses impact. A person who always seeks approval loses authority. Someone who explains themselves endlessly begins appearing emotionally uncertain. Human beings are deeply influenced by emotional availability, often without consciously realizing it. The less control you have over where your attention goes, the more psychologically dependent you become on external validation. The uncomfortable truth is that many people are not rejected because they lack value. They are ignored because they overexpose their emotional availability too quickly. They gave access before respect was earned. They made attention cheap, and cheap things rarely hold psychological power for long. Because in the end, people do not fully value your presence when you are always there. They value it the moment they realize they might actually access to it. Most people talk too much because silence terrifies them. They rush to explain themselves, fill awkward pauses, defend their intentions, and emotionally react the moment tension enters a conversation. What they fail to understand is that silence is not empty, it is psychologically revealing. Silence creates pressure, and pressure exposes what people were trying to hide. Human beings can carefully manage words when they feel emotionally comfortable, but the moment silence removes that comfort, hidden intentions begin rising to the surface almost automatically. This is why intelligent observers rarely rush to speak. They understand that people reveal themselves most clearly when they are left alone with their own emotional discomfort. Watch what happens during conflict when one person suddenly becomes calm and quiet. The other individual often begins unraveling psychologically. They talk more than necessary, over-explain details, become defensive, seek reassurance, or accidentally reveal insecurity through emotional leakage. Why? because silence removes emotional direction. It forces the other person to confront uncertainty without knowing what you are thinking, and uncertainty is deeply unsettling to the human mind. Most manipulation depends on emotional momentum. A manipulative person provokes reactions, creates confusion, or pressures others into immediate responses because emotional reactions provide information and control. But silence interrupts that process completely. It slows the interaction down and exposes motives that emotional chaos was trying to conceal. The liar becomes nervous when silence lingers too long. The insecure person desperately seeks validation. The attention seeker increases emotional intensity to regain focus. Silence acts like a mirror people cannot escape from. Even in everyday life, this pattern quietly controls human behavior. Notice how some people become uncomfortable when you stop instantly replying to messages. Observe how quickly others begin questioning themselves when you no longer chase conversation or emotionally feed their behavior. Many individuals rely heavily on emotional reassurance to maintain confidence. When that reassurance disappears, their true intentions emerge. Someone genuinely interested will approach with consistency and clarity. Someone driven by ego, control, or temporary validity often becomes impatient, manipulative, or emotionally distant once they stop receiving predictable reactions. Powerful people understand something dangerous about human psychology. Whoever controls emotional pace controls perception. Silence creates space for observation, while forcing others to reveal patterns unconsciously. This is why emotionally disciplined individuals often appear mysterious. They are not desperate to control how they are perceived. They are comfortable letting silence work for them while others expose themselves trying to escape discomfort. The uncomfortable truth is that most people are not revealed by the questions you ask them. They are revealed by how they behave when your silence denies them emotional certainty. Because silence does not simply hide your thoughts, it quietly forces others to confess theirs. Most people chase attraction before they earn respect, and this is why their emotional power collapses so quickly. They become overly available, emotionally reactive, eager to impress, desperate to maintain connection at any cost. They believe emotional intensity creates closeness, but human psychology operates differently beneath the surface. Atra. CDON without respect is unstable because emotions change constantly. Respect, however, is rooted in perception of emotional strength, self-control, and psychological stability. And nothing creates that perception faster than emotional detachment. Emotional detachment does not mean becoming cold or emotionless. It means refusing to let your emotions become publicly controlled by another person's behavior. Most individuals unconsciously test emotional stability early in relationships and social interactions. They delay responses, shift energy unexpectedly, create confusion, or subtly withdraw attention just to observe reactions. Not always out of cruelty, but because human beings instinctively measure emotional dependence. The moment someone realizes your mood rises and falls based on their validation, they begin perceiving you differently. Desperation silently weakens respect, even when the other person cannot explain why. This is why emotionally detached individuals often appear more magnetic. They are calm where others become anxious. They observe where others chase. They maintain emotional balance even when attention fluctuates. That stability creates psychological weight. And beings naturally trust and respect people who appear internally grounded because emotional control signals strength. The person who can walk away calmly from disrespect without emotional collapse immediately becomes harder to manipulate. And what cannot be easily controlled often becomes deeply respected. Watch how people behave around someone who does not seek approval constantly. At first, it creates confusion. People expect emotional pursuit, reassurance, and predictable reactions because most individuals operate from emotional hunger. But when someone remains centered regardless of attention, rejection, or emotional games, others begin projecting value onto them automatically. Mystery forms. Curiosity grows. Respect develops before attraction fully emerges. because emotional self-control creates the perception of higher status in the human mind. In modern relationships, many people unintentionally destroy attraction by overexposing emotional dependency too early. Constant texting, immediate availability, emotional over-explaining, and fear of silence quietly communicate insecurity. But emotional detachment creates space. It allows attraction to breathe instead of suffocating it with neediness. The detached person does not force connection. They allow people to reveal their true intentions naturally through effort and consistency. The uncomfortable truth is that many people are not attracted to emotional chaos itself. They are attracted to the emotional strength of someone who remains composed within it, because beneath attraction lies a deeper psychological instinct. People respect those who appear capable of surviving emotionally without them. And the moment someone realizes your peace does not depend on their attention, your presence stops feeling ordinary and starts feeling powerful. Most people are manipulated not because they are unintelligent, but because they listen emotionally instead of observing strategically. Human beings are deeply vulnerable to words. A few compliments can create attachment. An apology can erase months of disrespect. Emotional promises create hope powerful enough to blind people to reality. But words are often designed to influence emotion in the moment, while behavior quietly reveals intention over time. This is why behavioral patterns matter more than emotional words. Patterns are difficult to fake consistently because they emerge from habit, impulse, and character, the parts of a person that eventually expose the truth, no matter how carefully they speak. A person may tell you they care deeply about you, yet repeatedly disappear when you need them most. They may promise loyalty while constantly creating emotional uncertainty. They may speak with warmth during moments of fear or loneliness, then emotionally withdraw once reassurance is secured. Most people become trapped in confusion because they keep judging isolated moments emotionally, instead of studying repeated behavior objectively. They focus on what was said during emotional intensity, while ignoring what was consistently done afterward. But the unconscious mind always leaks through patterns. Repetition is confession. Watch how people behave when emotions are no longer convenient. That is where true character appears. Anyone can sound sincere when they fear losing access to you. Anyone can appear attentive during moments of attraction, guilt, or emotional desperation. But consistency requires discipline, and discipline reveals intention. The person who only values you when your attention is fading is revealing dependency, not genuine connection. The individual who repeatedly crosses boundaries after apologizing is showing you that their comfort matters more than your respect. Yet many people continue believing emotional words because accepting behavioral truth would force painful decisions they are emotionally afraid to make. Emotionally intelligent individuals understand something most people never learn. Behavior is the language beneath language. Tone changes. Promises change. Emotional states change. But repeated actions exposes priorities with brutal honesty. This is why calm observers are rarely surprised by betrayal. They notice the patterns long before the final event arrived. Small lies, inconsistency, disrespect disguised as humor, selective affection, sudden distance after emotional closeness. Human beings reveal themselves gradually through repetition, but emotionally attached people often ignore the evidence because hope feels safer than truth. Modern relationships are filled with people performing emotions rather than living them. Social media, instant communication, and emotional validation culture have made words cheap. Anyone can type affection, perform loyalty, or imitate emotional depth temporarily. But patterns require sustained authenticity, and authenticity cannot survive contradiction forever. The uncomfortable truth is that people rarely hide who they are completely. They simply rely on the fact that most individuals are too emotionally distracted to study the pattern. And the moment you stop listening to words and start observing repetition, human behavior becomes terrifyingly predictable. Most people do not lose themselves all at once. They lose themselves slowly through constant emotional exposure to the wrong people, the wrong environments, and the wrong psychological pressures. Human beings absorb emotional energy far more deeply than they realize. Every interaction leaves residue. Every unnecessary argument, every manipulative conversation, every emotionally draining connection quietly shapes the nervous system over time. Yet most individuals remain constantly accessible, permanently connected, endlessly available to people who disturb their peace without adding value to their life. They call it loyalty, love, or patience, while their mind slowly becomes exhausted from emotional overcrowding. This is why strategic distance restores psychological balance. Because distance interrupts emotional contamination before it becomes identity. The modern world has conditioned people to fear distance. Silence is interpreted as rejection. Boundaries are labeled coldness. Taking space feels unnatural because people have become addicted to constant emotional stimulation. But psychological clarity cannot survive endless emotional noise. When you are always reacting, always explaining, always emotionally available, your mind loses the ability to observe reality objectively. You begin living inside emotional pressure instead of outside it. And emotionally overwhelmed people become easy to manipulate because exhaustion weakens perception. Strategic distance changes this dynamic completely. The moment you step back from constant emotional involvement, hidden truths begin surfacing. You notice who only valued your availability. You recognize how many conversations revolved around draining your energy rather than respecting it. You start seeing patterns that emotional attachment once blurred. Distance sharpens perception because it removes emotional fog. This is why powerful individuals often disappear temporarily after emotional chaos. They understand something most people never learn. Clarity requires separation. Observe human behavior when you create distance. Some people immediately become more respectful. Others become irritated, anxious, or manipulative. Why? Because distance removes easy access. It disrupts emotional dependency and exposes hidden expectations. Many relationships quietly rely on one person sacrificing their peace to maintain emotional harmony. The moment that sacrifice stops, the true foundation of the connection becomes visible, and this realization is often uncomfortable because it forces people to confront how much of their emotional life has been built around fear of disconnection, rather than genuine mutual respect. Strategic distance is not about punishing people. It is about protecting mental balance from emotional overconsumption. It allows the nervous system to reset. It restores independent thinking. It reminds you that your emotional state should not be controlled by every message, every mood, or every person demanding access to your attention. Most individuals are constantly available because they fear being forgotten. But emotionally powerful people understand that preserving inner peace is more valuable than preserving every connection. Because the moment you learn to step back from what disturbs your mind, you begin realizing how much of your suffering was never caused by life itself, but by giving too many people unrestricted access to your emotions. Most people believe emotional reactions are signs of strength. They think anger proves confidence, jealousy proves love, and immediate responses prove self-respect. But beneath human behavior lies a darker psychological truth. Emotional reactions often reveal where control has been lost. The moment someone can provoke your emotions on command, they gain silent influence over your mental state. A single message changes your mood. A cold response ruins your peace. A small act of disrespect consumes your thoughts for hours. And without realizing it, you begin living emotionally controlled by external behavior rather than internal discipline. This is why indifference is more powerful than emotional reaction. Indifference breaks the psychological chain completely. It denies manipulators, attention seekers, and emotionally immature people the reaction they unconsciously crave. Most individuals feed on emotional feedback. You want to know what affected you. Even negative emotion satisfies the ego because it proves psychological access still exists. Anger, arguing, chasing closure, over-explaining, all of it communicates the same hidden message. You still have emotional influence over me, but But indifference sends a far more unsettling signal. It communicates emotional independence. Observe human behavior carefully after conflict, rejection, or disrespect. The emotionally reactive person becomes predictable. They post indirectly online, seek validation from others, replay conversations endlessly, or attempt to win emotionally. But the indifferent person does something psychologically disturbing to others. They remain calm. No dramatic speeches, no emotional collapse, no desperate need to prove value. And this calmness creates confusion because people are conditioned to expect reaction. Silence after disrespect feels unnatural to emotionally impulsive minds. This does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending not to care. False indifference is easy to detect because bitterness still leaks through behavior. True indifference comes from emotional detachment, the realization that not every disrespect deserves your energy. Not every opinion deserves your attention, and not every person deserves access to your emotional world. Powerful individuals understand that emotional energy is limited. They spend it carefully. Most people waste years emotionally reacting to situations that should have been mentally released within minutes. Indifference also exposes hidden intentions. Some people only continue certain behaviors because they enjoy your emotional response to them. The manipulator loses interest when control disappears. The attention seeker becomes uncomfortable when validation stops. The toxic individual becomes frustrated when emotional chaos no longer works. Indifference removes emotional fuel from unhealthy dynamics, and without fuel, many psychological games collapse naturally. The uncomfortable truth is that people often respect emotional control